There are many people in Ireland who would tell me that I am making a mistake in speaking about these things. Clans of natives in the Americas have their own things of which they do not speak, such as skinwalkers or wendigos. A non-Irish person may hear the word fairy and anticipate to hear me speak of Tinkerbell, of granted wishes, or romance and mischief. But fairy is a complicated and misunderstood term. In English, the word gift means a present, but in German, it is a word for poison. This is how I have always seen the term fairy, and to a lot of people, it is a misnomer. In order to explain what I mean, we will be speaking about the foundational myth of Ireland, the Leabhar Gavála Éireann, the Book of Invasions, but also about the modern view on things. Before we begin in earnest, I want to set a few poles of guidance. Firstly, fairy is not a species, it is a status. Secondly, the resting place of a fairy is critical to understanding them. And third, while they are inherently magical, they are not that in a way a mortal can understand. And finally, fairies are contextual beings. In some stories, they will be hostile and terrifying, and in another, they may be generous and gorgeous. As a foreword on the existence of modern fairy belief in Ireland, here is an anecdote from Dr Declan Downey.
Which reminds me of a wonderful story from the late 1960s, early 70s, when there were major changes to Irish agriculture. And then, of course, we joined the European Economic Community in 1971-72. And that's when you had a lot of investment coming into Irish farming with the building of new milking parlours and barns, etc., for cattle. All very, very modern. And there was a Dutch film crew that were in West Limerick. I won't mention the place. The people are still there. But they were filming a number of farms, and farmers doing a documentary on how the Irish farmers were coping with the new changes, you see, and all of that, and the investment into farming, and how they were developing their farms while at the same time respectful of traditions. And they were in this farm, anyhow, say in West Limerick, and they noticed that the old stall, the old wooden stall with the thatched roof on it, and inside the door you had the St. Bridget's cross. Again, she's the patroness of all cattle and farm animals. And the rowan, the sprig of the rowan tree, branch of the rowan tree, I should say. And the rowans, of course, were also to ward off evil spirits and witches, etc. So they noticed that over the old barn. And then they went into the new milking parlour, and they saw the St. Bridget's cross and the rowan branch in the new parlour as well. So they asked the farmer why was this tradition being kept, and he spoke to them about it and what they meant, etc. And one of the Dutch interviewers said, "But surely you don't believe in these things." "Oh, of course I don't believe in them, but they're there."
As I stated in the beginning, fairies are a difficult thing to pin down, in more sense than just one. To open a proper explanation, I will ask a question. What does a god look like when the land has grown around it? When the dominion of a deity is surrendered and the land overruns its will? The Tuatha De Danann, often shortened to the Tuatha, are a pre-human, human-like race whose name translates to the tribe of the gods. Written of them in the Leabhar Gavála Éireann is that the truth was not known beneath the sky of stars, whether they were of heaven or of earth. They came down upon mountains from dark clouds and spread their influence through vast knowledge of architecture, the arts, and magic. While boasting this incredible power, they mostly preferred to indulge in the arts when left well enough alone, which, naturally, did not last forever. A group of humans arrived by sea and ship and were met by three Tuatha goddesses: Eru, whose namesake later became Erin, the Irish name for Ireland, Banba, and Fodla, who asked that the island be named after them. Of course, we know that occurred. When their husbands arrived, each a Tuatha king, they managed to get the humans to agree on a truce. For 3 days, the humans would anchor 9 waves' distance from the land. No sooner than did the humans comply, the Tuatha summoned a storm to keep them at bay, winds blowing them back out to sea. Amerigan, a poet aboard the human vessel, soothed the storm with a song, so the humans landed it and defeated the Tuatha. With respect in their defeat, the Tuatha De Danann surrendered, and the land of Ireland was split in two, above and below, material world and other world. The Tuatha were brought to burial mounds called She, and laid there, not dead, not gone, but alive and eternal in the other world. Eventually, the Tuatha De Danann changed into the Aes She as a result of this, the folk of the She, the burial mounds. It is sometimes translated to incorporate the story's connotations as the hidden folk, or the fair folk, or the good people. It is from the word she that we get banshee, for example, which is a type of fairy. This brings up the other element of fairies. They are not just otherworldly deities changed by their absence from the material plane. They are also myriad, manifold, and in all different shapes and sizes. Having been a people of the art in their time upon the material land of Ireland, it is not surprising then that they are no less universally motivated as the Aes She, and all individual. There are commonalities in the behaviour of the Aes She, however. For example, the Aes She lack a sense of morality in a way that we understand it. Instead, for them, morality is replaced by a type of reciprocity, exchange. You may find yourself alone in the woods at night and encounter a person behaving completely normally. But if you cough in their presence and do not immediately apologize, the Aes She will reveal themselves and take what they feel is owed in kind. It is difficult to mention the significance of fairies without mentioning that of their domiciles, the fairy forts, or the associated structures such as fairy trees. Fairy forts are usually found in fields, between the size of a car or a small house, marked by a circular earthen bank or depression in the ground. It is said that the Aes She guard these, and some who step into them report feelings of derealization, lightheadedness, or fatigue. To interfere with or destroy a fairy structure is considered a grave error, and even in the current day, all misfortune which befalls an interfering party will be treated almost as karma. Like Declan's anecdote in the beginning suggested, the fairies are respected to this day, even if people are sheepish to admit that they put any stock in such beliefs.
As for the fairies, well, that's the English word, fairies. But in Irish, they were never called anything like that. In the Irish, they're known as the She, S-I-H-E. And the She can be translated from the Old Irish into phrases like the lordly ones, or the good ones, or the special ones. They were never derogatively referred to. They were always referred to with respect. Even the ones that were malevolent had to be treated with respect. So fairy is an English word, and it comes from the German die Feen. Die Feen refers to, again, this sort of spiritual people that live in ancient forests and mountains and etc. So, words like elves and gnomes, that they all come from a Germanic Scandinavian tradition, and even then the elf-like peoples, that's transliterated then into English as the fairies, and then it's used here in English in Ireland to refer to the She, but that's actually incorrect. We talk about fairy forts and that, but that's a 19th century English name for them. The Irish always refer to them as the She, or the lordly ones, or the kindly ones, or the good ones, the Eumenides in Greek. So these are spiritual beings. Now, again, going back into the tradition of the mythology, they are supposed to be the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Dana, or Diana, the goddess of the moon, of hunting, Artemis in Greek. So they would have come from Scythia in the Greek world many millennia ago here to Ireland. This was the idea. That then when the Milesians, the Celts, arrived under Amergin and they tried to take the country, it was through poetic battle in poetry between Amergin and the Tuatha De Danann, and Amergin's poem won. And the Tuatha De Danann agreed then that they would be the rulers of the realm under the ground, and the Milesians, Celts, would rule over the ground. So that's where that comes from. So again, we need to be careful about these things and not to get them mixed up with so many other cultures, because they're quite different. And that we have our own she or lordly ones, or Tuatha De Danann, if you like. And these are the people or the beings that our ancestors were very careful about, not to annoy them, not to disturb them, etc. So we need to bear that in mind as well with regards to connection with the other world. So again, people were often asked the story in stories, how did these people come into being? Why are they not with God? Why are they not with the devil? And of course, there are lots of stories connected with that in folklore, where priests would often be accosted on the road at night by the she, and they would be asked, who will we be with on Judgment Day? And the priests would often have to be careful, you see, not to annoy them, so they would give an ambiguous answer. So there was a certain ambiguity about the she. Are they evil spirits, or are they good spirits, or are they somewhat indeterminate in between? Now, some parts of folk tradition say that they are the fallen angels, those that fell with Lucifer from heaven. But the fallen angels went straight to hell. They didn't go into an intermediate term. But as I say, these are all the little things that are thrown up in the folklore, and that as I say, it's they're an indeterminate grouping, and so that is why people have to be respectful of them. So that's why we have the sceach, that forlorn white thorn tree in the middle of a field that's never touched, or the ring forts, the old ancient ring forts, which are covered with white thorn trees or ash trees, some oak, etc., and they're never touched. People are aware of them and aware of their significance, and there is still a deep-rooted sense about the existence of these beings. So, as I say, people have an ambiguous belief. They like to pretend they're not superstitious, that they're modern, that they're with it, but at the same time, they're not going to tempt things either. Tempting fate is always a dangerous thing. And one thing is for certain, when it comes to hedging their bets, Irish people have always been very good at it. There's an old expression said of Kerry people, and it's also the very same expression in Spain of people from Galicia, the Gallego. These are the Celts of northern Spain. That if you meet a Kerry man or a Gallego on a staircase, you'll never know whether he's coming up or going down.
It is easy to lose sight of the fact that the Aes She, the most common type of fairy, are a warped and defeated form of God. Diminished divinity, given freely in surrender. A distorted slant of light, who respected their defeat. Few other pantheons echo the Tuatha story. It is difficult to imagine the entire Greek pantheon, for instance, submitting to deposition. However, the Aes She are only one type of fairy, and there are many. Some are categories like the previously mentioned Banshee, a figure which likely needs no introduction, and there are several individuals that are noteworthy within that category. However, there is one story of an individual fairy that is of note, one which is suspected to be the true inspiration for Dublin-born writer Bram Stoker's seminal work, the novel Dracula. Sometime in the 5th or 6th century, in the County Derry town of Slatavery, there was a chieftain named Avertak or Auertak. The ancient Irish had a conception of wholeness that is not so much seen in the modern day. If one lost a limb in battle, they were seen as less than a man or woman. To be missing a part of oneself was to be incomplete. While this stance is incompatible with a modern worldview, it is important to this story. One must remember that in ancient times, life was short and hard, and to be missing a limb or diminished in some other way created real difficulties for both the self and the society around them in ways that we have the learning and technology to get around in today's day and age. We may choose to be merciful upon them in hopes future generations will bestow the same benefit of the doubt unto us. The reason I feel the need to clarify this is that Auertak's very name translates very literally from Irish to dwarf, so a short stature is implied, and depending on how you read the story, key to this. It is possible that the local peoples of the area gave Auertak this name after the events of the legend in an ironic twist, but given another fact I'll reveal later, that seems unlikely. Auertak's reign was notably cruel. His lands bordered that of another chieftain, Cahan, whose name and clan serve as the basis for the modern surnames of O'Kane, Kane, and Keane. There is an implication of rivalry between them in the legend, and it is perhaps jealousy that jilted the rule of Auertak over his subjects. Another interesting note is that his name also suggests a lack of respect from his people. A chieftain's job is to resolve disputes and oversee his land like any other warlord or king in early history. And for Auertak, this was likely a thankless job. And it is kind of because of this sort of lack of fair play and this social exchange, this social contract, that he is regarded as a fairy in nature because he chooses to take something else in this story. There is a dispute over exactly how, whether by the hand of Cahan, the rival, or by falling from a high place. But Auertak is somehow killed and receives the burial of a king. The body is laid out upright and standing in its tomb as opposed to horizontally. However, the next day, Auertak is reseated upon his throne. In early modern versions, he then demands a bowl of blood from the wrists of each member of his kingdom. This detail, while absent in the eldest version of the tale, is notable, and I will bring up more differences that occur with the early modern versus original or eldest known retellings as they come up later. Horrified that the tyrant had returned, Auertak's people stormed into Khan's land, begging him to free them of the dwarf once more. Khan returns in armor and slays him in combat. So you can imagine Khan's surprise when the next day the denizens of the neighboring kingdom are asking him to grant Auertak his third death. The detail of the story varies here again. In early modern versions, Khan seeks a local saint, but in the oldest tales, it is a druid he goes to for aid. Either way, he is told that Auertak is no longer a human being, whether he has been possessed or replaced by a fairy or struck a bargain with one or become something else. Most commonly, he is regarded as some sort of fairy. Maybe he always was one. At the druid's advice, Khan returns to Auertak's hold and pierces his heart with a wooden sword carved from a yew branch, leaving it in his body. He then buries him upside down to face the other world and plants thorned vegetation to ensure that Auertak would be barred by roots if he somehow made it past the previous defenses. Finally, the grave was covered by a very large stone. Now, here's what makes me think Auertak's name was not ironic. His grave is known today as the Giant's Grave, and that is possibly the pinnacle of dry Irish sarcasm. I have lived all 26 years of my life in this country, and I know when my fellow countrymen are making fun of an incredibly traumatic and perspective-shaking cultural event so they can all laugh about it over a few drinks and go to sleep that night. Thank you for joining me by the bonfire again. Between gods altered by shattered dimensions and a fairy vampire meeting his demise at the hands of a great warlord, I think we've laid out a good foundation of what the word fairy truly represents in Ireland. More stories of the fairies will emerge. Most Irish mythological creatures who are said to encounter humans come from this category of understanding. If you happen across a beautiful stranger this winter, don't ask anything from them. Apologize if you cough or sneeze. Be polite and careful with your words. Respect goes a long way in Ireland. It goes all the way back to the beginning.